You determine the value of your effort. I don't care if you're supporting the mission of an existing organization or if you've decided to develop your own business. You determine the value of your effort. If you're working for an organization, determining the value of your effort starts with you negotiating your salary. And depending on the scarcity of your skill set, you may have less or more negotiating power. Now, if you've developed your own business, supply and demand in that market is going to tell you what you should set your price at. However, as a business owner, you can set your price at whatever price you choose to. But at some point, there's going to be a point of diminishing returns because the market is going to tell you when you're overpriced. Take real estate, for example. Real estate is a basic necessity for every aspect of our lives, whether it be personal or professional. Our houses, our storefronts, our office buildings, our factories, all real estate. And with just that one thing, there are so many different costs that are associated with it. When you purchase real estate, you have a mortgage. That mortgage has interest. That land and that building has taxes. You have insurance because you want to mitigate the risk associated with owning that real estate because it's so costly. You have maintenance whenever something goes wrong. You have utilities because you have to run the facility with electricity, water. Those are energy costs that continue to rise. There are legal fees that are sometimes associated with real estate. I've just named 7. And all these things, these underlying things, not only drive the cost up for the common person to just live day to day, they also drive the cost up for the products and services that are provided by businesses. Because this underlying asset is one of the basic costs that need to be considered when setting prices. At some point, it's going to be too much. At some point, the energy costs associated with real estate are going to be too much. And those costs get passed to consumers. That's how that works. We've seen it with the tariffs. Yeah, charging people for things makes sense in some instances, but who's going to pay for it inevitably? The people who ultimately use those services. The people who ultimately use those products. And then sometimes those people are individuals, and then sometimes those people are businesses. And so as we think about determining the value for our effort, one of the best ways that I can think of providing value is by empowering individuals and businesses to drive down cost and increase the quality of life for themselves. In the age of artificial intelligence, where there is going to be artificial intelligence for almost anything, it's an extremely empowering tool to assist us with driving down the cost of our daily lives and of our businesses and increasing the quality of our life. For example, I was looking for an HVAC system for a property, and I was getting quotes, as I typically do, by going to various vendors. And something in me said, just try asking ChatGPT. Not about the total cost, but how much the unit should cost and where I can get that unit for under a certain price point. Immediately, ChatGPT came back with a list of vendors websites and price points that I could purchase that machine at, or that HVAC system at. And I ended up shaving off a third of the cost that some of the vendors were charging me to install the HVAC systems, because this is what they were doing. They would take the cost of the system, they would double it, and then add on a labor cost. But through ChatGPT, I was able to quickly zero in on the minimum cost of the material associated with that service, so that I could have more transparency into what was actually being paid for. And that's how I was able to save a third of what I would have paid if I had not used that tool. It was a tool of empowerment. It's a tool that costs the average person $20, I believe it's priced at now. They also have a free service. But the value that is provided by that tool is astronomical. And I think that as a global community, that's where we all should be going, not only for those of us who are business owners, but also those of us who are in careers and who are looking to provide value to organizations that have an existing mission that we want to support. How can you make an impact of empowerment in that business, whether it be your business or someone else's, so that ultimately the people that receive your service or your product improve the quality of their life while also reducing cost? When I look at the greatest country on the planet, or when I envision the greatest country on the planet, I envision a country where everybody has access to a high quality standard of living, where people aren't fighting against each other for resources, where we don't feel like we are coming from a spirit of scarcity, where there's abundance everywhere and we see it. And we don't have to tear down other societies in order to achieve it. That is, in my opinion, what is meant by being the greatest country on the planet. But we've been distracted by capitalism and individualism and not thinking from a collective perspective, but needing everybody to think from a collective perspective, because without the little person, there is no big person. The capitalists have sold themselves on this dream that in order for me to win, somebody else has to lose. And don't get me wrong, I live in a capitalist society. I have adopted many capitalist views, but I've also adopted views that are collaborative and that ensure that I'm empowering people wherever I go, whether it be personally or in business, because I believe that when we all win, that is when we are creating the society that can be called the best country on the planet. But when only some of us win, that's not the greatest place on the planet. That's just a different place. You can throw a stone and find places that consist of people who are fighting against one another, structures that are fighting against one another, governments that are fighting against the people that they're supposed to be there to serve, police officers that are fighting against the citizens that they're supposed to be there to serve. Doing it all under the guise that because they're in these positions, they deserve a right that's above any other citizen. The greatest country on earth is the greatest country where every citizen thrives regardless of their position. So how do we create that? How do we, as individuals supporting organizations, as business owners, as general citizens, create that? We think from a perspective of empowerment when we think about our value and our effort. What effort are we putting in to empower the communities in which we live? What effort are we putting in to empower the businesses for which we serve and the customers for which we serve and the families for which we serve? When we start thinking about value through empowerment, that's when we can enter into a different paradigm shift. We don't have to fight amongst each other for resources. There's more than enough resources on this planet. We just have to tap into them and to be more creative, to think like OpenAI, the founder of ChatGPT, to think about creating solutions regardless of our industry that empower the people that we serve. Because it's through that empowerment that everybody wins. And that is okay.